This is Julianne Condia, host of Rewritten. Thank you so much for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
How's it going, everybody? This is Keith.
And Katie, hosts of Coffee with Keith and Katie, here on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. When you're done here, I hope you'll check out our show, Coffee with Keith and Katie,
where we talk about our lives and relationship over a cup of coffee.
A new episode airs on Facebook Live every Monday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Coffee with Keith and Katie.
Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Throughout history, the course of sports has been shaped by one thing: the fans.
From the moments you never dreamed of,
to save the USA's life in this World Cup. Paul, the runner, loose ball, it's good. Gonzaga, the slipper still fits.
To the moments that still give you nightmares.
Behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. He's in. Patriots win the Super Bowl. Brady has his fifth.
Through the good and the bad, fans have helped change the games we watch and the players we love.
They may not be the most logical people.
You are a factory of sadness. I'll see you Sunday.
But they know their teams better than anybody.
They'll blow in the ninth.
You may not always see them, but you know where to find them.
After all, there's nothing quite like the view from the cheap seats.
Broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Grab a chair and enjoy all there is in
the cheap seats.
What up, everybody? Welcome once again all the way up in the cheap seats. Christian Heimall here with you, along with John Lauder on this beautiful Monday, June 11th, wherever and however you may be listening, whether it's on Spreaker.com, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, iTunes, I guess, is kind of the important one, Google Play as well. Those are kind of the two big ones, maybe, I think. Yep, okay, those ones, good, got it. All right, as well as thephmedia.com. However you're listening, we appreciate you for doing so and starting your week off with us all the way up here in the cheap seats. A lot to get to here. A busy weekend, history made, of course. We'll get into that in a little bit. Our Mojo Monday, and of course, Brandon Robinson, Scoopy Radio, is going to join us once again here in a couple weeks to talk. Or a couple weeks, wow, dumb. Couple moments here. And he will talk NBA Finals. Yeah, we're going to wait a while to talk to Brandon, but whatever.
Yeah, we're going to release the third part of this podcast in 2 weeks.
Yes, exactly. The third segment.
We like things to be just right where they need to be.
Exactly. So we'll preview our talk with him. We'll recap our talk with him, but you won't hear the talk with him for until July. Correct. Basically.
We're going to leave you hanging.
Exactly. That's what we do. Cliffhangers here. But yeah, so we'll talk with Brandon in just a little bit. We'll touch on the, of course, Warriors sweep of the Cavaliers, their second title in a row, their third title in the last 4 years, and now the real important part of the NBA season begins, and that is, where does LeBron James go? So we'll talk about all of that. Does he even go anywhere? John and I will give our thoughts in a little bit, but we were going to obviously have Brandon talk about it as well. Still, like I said, plenty to get to on this show. Jam-packed Monday here on this June 11th. But John, let's start it off. History again on Saturday in Belmont as Justify becomes just the 13th horse ever to win the Triple Crown, led wire to wire in the Belmont Stakes. Second time now in 4 years. Of course, in 2015 we had American Pharoah break the 37-year drought, but whether you believe it or not, it was still history to be made in the sporting world.
No, I mean, it was history, but is it really history if it happens twice in 4 years? It's kind of getting boring now. I mean, are we going to have a Triple Crown, winner every 2-3 years?
I mean, is that a bad thing for horse racing, for the sport? Does it get kind of boring after a little bit? Do you think?
Well,
or was that the mystique of it?
I do feel like it's going to lose some of its luster if you keep doing that. I don't know.
If we have more boring, I guess, or worse for their sport, multiple Triple Crowns in such a short time like we've had, or 4 straight NBA Finals with the same guys. Because that's kind of the...
It's horse racing.
Really? All right. Okay.
I'm sorry. I just don't care about horse
racing.
No,
I listen. I get it, and a lot of people don't. A lot of folks don't.
Now look, I did watch all 3 races. I was rooting for Justify to win, but it only took up a total of 10 minutes of my time. So
exactly, 90,000 people at Belmont, and I mean, John, you and I, you know this, but I used to cover the Belmont when we were in college, and I would be there every first Saturday in June. And when that place has a meaningful opportunity, it's impressive. It's insane how loud it gets.
And out of those 90,000 people, 89,000 of them were completely wasted.
Exactly, pretty much, yeah, for the most part. But here's the question, though, and this is going to be our poll question here. If you go to the Cheap Seats by Public House Media on Facebook, you can vote, is the Triple Crown a true athletic achievement? And listen, we debated something similar to this a couple weeks ago, like what's more thankful, a jockey for a Triple Crown winner or the caddy for a golfer? And if you go back and look, John, it was a complete sweep. Like, everybody voted for the caddy. Nobody cared about the jockey for the horse
it's not
racing.
An athletic achievement, man. It's all about the horse. The jockey's just there to slap it around a little bit. I mean, and it's not like you can interview the horse afterwards and get its thoughts.
I mean, it's true, and the horse isn't going to get invited to the White House or have a chance to deny an invitation. But
it is now worth $75 million just to reproduce, and that is something we could all aspire to.
That's insane. But here's the thing, and I don't know if this bodes well for an argument on if it's an athletic achievement. Look, a lot of things have to happen, and I'm one of those guys who like I'm sorry, poker's a sport. That's obviously not an athletic achievement, But when you look at like stock car racing, for example, or Formula One, is that a true athletic achievement? And I will argue that it is, simply because of the mental strength and the mental capacity that you have to be able to do it. And I think that's somewhat similar with regards to the preparation that goes into prepare a horse race is impressive. And the ability to do something like this, think about this, John, and I'm just going through this, how rare this actually is. It's the 13th time it's ever happened in 150 years of the Belmont. 141 Triple Crown opportunities. This is just the 13th time that it's actually happened. I'm going to put that in perspective for you guys. In baseball, there's the Triple Crown for batting, correct? There's, batting average, home runs, and RBIs leading the league in all 3 categories. It's happened 16 times in baseball history. Pitching Triple Crown has happened 27 times. Hitting 400 has happened 13 times in Major League Baseball. NBA, you've got 2 guys ever who have averaged a triple-double for an entire year. Only 1 guy has ever won the Heisman Trophy twice. So it's from an athletic, like the rarity of it, I think kind of adds to the idea of whether or not it's an actual athletic achievement or not. I think it is, just because when you look at the jockey, the training that they have to go through to prepare, and the camaraderie, the chemistry they have to have with that horse is a big, big part of it. So to me, it's an athletic achievement. It's not up there with, let's say, UFC or hockey or soccer for that matter, but it is still, to me, an athletic achievement.
Yeah, I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't care how good a jockey you are. If your horse sucks, then you have no chance. So, I don't know. I mean,
that's not the wrong approach either. I mean,
it's hard for me to get crazy about something that lasts, 2 minutes.
Agreed. I can understand that.
I mean, there was like 8 hours of pre-race coverage for a 2-minute race. I mean,
I can agree with
seriously.
that. Yeah.
Like, how many times do we have to have someone tell us how the horse is feeling? Did you talk to the horse? You did not talk to the horse. You have no idea how the horse is feeling. For all you know, the horse is just thinking about, the carrots when the race is over. You have no idea. So the whole thing is the pageantry of it is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
A spectacle. It may not be as much of a sporting event as it is a spectacle. That might be.
That's more accurate.
Bob Baffert cemented himself as the greatest trainer of all time with his second Triple Crown horse. Of course, he trained American Pharoah. And then another little fun side note: Justify, part owned by the Mara family, and Rob Gronkowski again loses to the Mara family. So woohoo!
Hey, but his horse came in second and wasn't even supposed to do anything.
Wasn't even supposed to do anything. That was awesome.
So that is awesome. So let's move on here inside the Cheap Seats on the Public House Media Network. John Lauder, Christian Heimall with you on this Monday, June 11th, 2018. Getting to some soccer. I'm excited. We're going to talk a lot of soccer coming up in the next month and a half. U.S. men's national team obviously didn't make the World Cup. What an embarrassment. But they've had some good performances recently. A nice 1-1 draw against the French. It's always good to not let France win at anything.
Do you believe the fact that the first time the U.S. has ever scored against France?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. We're an embarrassment, really.
That's so insane to me.
Yeah, it is. But look, they have a new general manager now in Ernie Stewart, former national player, over 30 years in U.S. soccer. They still have to hire a new manager. Look, there's a lot of young talent. It's just can it be properly molded? Because Jurgen Klinsmann was supposed to be, the savior, and he was the exact opposite. So, the biggest key right now is to get to 2022 and to make damn well sure you make the World Cup the next time around, because this was a huge embarrassment. And multiple people lost their jobs because of it, and they should have. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know, it's weird watching international friendlies a couple weeks before the World Cup, which again begins later this week in Russia. It's hard for me to care. It really is. It's really hard for me to sit there and go, oh wow, they had a 1-1 draw against the French without all those MLS stars that they generally have, a very young squad, and a coach who probably, a manager who probably isn't going to be there the next time this team takes the field in September. It's hard for me to get excited when I'm sitting there going, yeah, but you didn't make the World Cup, and you lost 2-1 to Ireland, for crying out loud, a week ago. Ireland. Now listen, Ireland is not terrible. They're 31st in the world. The U.S. is 25th, but still, to lose it like that in the 90th minute in stoppage time was just so embarrassing for me to watch, especially considering that, what was it, four years ago, the last World Cup, or I don't even know how long ago it was at this point, when the U.S. seemingly almost looked like they actually had a chance, and they've just gone downhill like a true dive bomb over the last 4 years.
It's been a mess. But the World Cup is still going to be great. It's still going to be exciting. Starts on Thursday in Russia. Germany could certainly repeat. They've got the best team again. Their team is so good that they're not taking certain players that would make it on any other team. But, Brazil's going to be really good again. Belgium, Portugal, Argentina. Can Leo Messi finally get that World Cup? And
France is a contender.
And for the love of God, could England just do something for my poor father? Could they do something? I mean, it's been 52 years now. 52 years. I mean, oh God, it's horrible. It's so embarrassing.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how many people. I'm interested to see what the ratings are in the U.S. because Fox has done a tremendous job of advertising this to the U.S. and trying to get people who would only watch because of America to actually still watch. So they've done a tremendous job.
Well, they basically have just been advertising Mexico.
Well, I mean that, but I mean the 23andMe comparison too, which is great. Like learning your heritage and rooting for that is pretty impressive. They've done a very clever job. So I'll be interested to see what the ratings actually are here. Maybe not for the the group stage, but when we get to the knockout round, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. So as we mentioned, U.S. draws with France in the friendly the other day. Also happening in France, the French Open. Which, again, if you're like me when it comes to tennis, you only watch the scroll across the bottom to see what happens unless something amazing is happening. But Simona Halep getting her first Grand Slam title the other day, beating Sloane Stephens, the American. It was not easy as Stephens took the first set, and then she had to come back and win the next two, getting her first Grand Slam and holding on to her number one ranking. Big win for her. In that one, and tough for Sloane Stephens because she has really kind of been, I guess, the next one in this wave of American women in tennis.
Yeah, well, it's really important that both Madison Keys and Sloane Stephens made the semifinals.
Exactly.
It's good that two American female tennis players, not named Serena Williams, were there because the Williams sisters, they're not going to be around forever. They're getting up there in age. Serena's obviously started a family. I mean, so it's critical for the next wave of great American female tennis players. We're still waiting for that next great American male tennis player. Is he out there? Is he coming? Where is he?
I think his grandfather hasn't been born yet. So, but who
seriously.
knows?
I mean, it's such an embarrassment. But then on the men's side, not surprisingly, Rafael Nadal, another clay court championship. I mean, this is getting to be as boring as the Belmont Stakes here. I mean, as
almost.
the greatest clay court player ever, 11th French Open title. I mean, look, he's not better than Federer, but he's got to be number two, right?
I don't even know if he's that, to be honest with you. Like, listen, all due respect, he's tremendous. He's so talented, and of course, 11 French Open titles is nothing to shake a stick at, but he's won 16 Grand Slams, and 11 of them have been in the same exact place. He's not, and clay is so different. I mean, you got the U.S. Open, which is hard court, and then you've got Wimbledon, which of course is grass. and he struggles so much there. You look at Federer and some of the and where his titles have.
Federer is better. I mean, I'm not arguing that.
Yes, but you look at some of these other guys like Bjorn Borg won a couple of U.S. Opens. You look at McEnroe, who had his solid. Even Djokovic. I mean, Novak Djokovic has such a better, I guess, spacing in terms of where his championships are. Like, for instance, I'm looking here at Roger Federer, 20 Grand Slam titles. Most of his have come at Wimbledon. He has won 8 Wimbledon titles of his 20. He has won 6 Australian, 5 U.S. Open, and 1 French Open. Meanwhile, you look at Nadal, and he's won 11 French Opens and, 2 of the other ones.
It's true.
So, I mean, it's just as talented and as great. He is the greatest clay court player of all time. Make no distinction about that. I don't know if he breaks the top 3 of actual greatest of all time.
That's fair.
That's
fair. All right, so we're going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk some NBA. Obviously, the finals are over. The Warriors won, not a huge shock. So where do we go from here? We'll break down some NBA. That in the next segment, we will get to talking to Brandon Robinson of Scoopy Radio, and so much more coming up here inside the Cheap Seats.
This is Sam Kirby, host of Cinema Stories here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Cinema Stories, where we hang out and just talk movie and TV news and reviews, and it's awesome. A new show comes out every single Tuesday. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Cinema Stories. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Katie, co-host of Coffee with Keith and Katie here on Public House Media. Once you are done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Coffee with Keith and Katie, where we talk about the adventures of our daily lives and relationship. A new show comes out every Tuesday and Friday at 8:30 p.m. Central. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Coffee with Keith and Katie. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Back-to-back here from Drake as we are back inside the Cheap Seats on the Public House Media Network. John Lauder and Christian Heimall with you on this Monday, June 11th, 2018. Make sure you check out thephmedia.com. Go to our Facebook page, The Cheap Seats by Public House Media. Answer the poll question. Is the Triple Crown an athletic achievement? The answer is no. You also can go to
Unless
Google
the answer is
Play
yes.
Spreaker. Well, but it's not, unless you go to Google. Don't argue with me, Heimall. Google Play, Spreaker, iTunes, Stitcher, Swapper, Reader, Writer, Reddit, whatever, to find the podcast. Go to the PH Media, buy some gear, get some coffee mugs, get some do-rags. I don't even know what they're selling now. It's crazy.
They got awesome. I'm telling you right now, they got these baseball
awesome.
tees. I got a baseball tee here. It feels amazing. I love the quality of it, personally.
One of everything in the store.
I did. I'm not going to lie to you.
He's got like 180 Public House Media items.
I threw out all of my other shirts and whatnot, and I only wear Public House Media gear. That's it. It's all I wear.
I tried to wear one of the coffee mugs that went terribly. Anyway, so let's talk about the NBA Finals. Obviously, the Warriors won. Not a huge shock there. I am a little surprised they swept. I did think the Cavs would get it.
I thought they'd get Game 3, but
yeah, especially how close games 1 and 3 were. But of course, J.R. Smith, we all know how much of a disaster Game 1 was, and then the 2 years in a row now Finals MVP Kevin Durant was incredible in Game 3, ensuring the sweep. And now, Warriors have won 3 out of the last 4. Should have been 4 in a row if Draymond Green didn't get himself suspended for kicking somebody in the jumblies. That's kind of where we're at. Golden State's the best, and everybody else is a distant second.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really surprising, as we kind of knew. Again, considering the injuries to Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving, and considering John Wall missed half the season, considering that the Cavaliers had all these trades in the middle of the season, I think it's a little surprising that Cleveland made it, but also not, because there is LeBron James there. But it's just, I don't understand the hate from everybody. I don't get it in terms of having this happen where you've got a team winning 3 titles in 4 years. I mean, when you look at it, John, remember the Celtics in like this? I mean, obviously we weren't alive, but the Celtics in the '60s won 9 titles in a decade. It's insane the social media outrage that we get just because we're getting a little upset about this. I personally think it's great because you got the best teams actually playing each other. That's tremendous.
Yeah, and I think it's great because I love when LeBron loses. But also,
I mean, John, real quick, in the 1950s, 6 titles won by 2 teams. In the 60s, 9 titles by 1 team. In the 70s, 4 titles by 2 teams. 80s and 90s, 8 titles by 2 teams. In the 2000s, 7 titles won by 2 teams. How is this a problem? How are the Warriors a problem?
It's not. It's not a problem. This is the way the NBA works. And back in the 60s, the Celtics, there was like, what, 12 teams or something?
Yeah, if that.
Yeah, it was completely different. So
it was Bill Russell punching everybody else on a basketball court. That was it.
Correct, exactly. You can't even really compare it. It's completely different eras.
Right.
But look, everything is complicated now. The Warriors' legacy is complicated because obviously they've got 4 potential Hall of Famers, 2 no-doubters. And, one of the best coaches in the NBA right now. And then, of course, Cleveland and LeBron's legacy is complicated because now LeBron's 3-6 in the finals. Obviously, he's one of the best to ever do it. Anybody that, says otherwise doesn't understand basketball.
Yeah.
His 15th season may have been his best, but to get swept twice now in the finals.
That's the insane part.
Now, I know the first one he was like 13 years old, and that team was like an AAU team. But still, and the whole thing with his hand was weird, how he was wearing the wrap in the post-game press
do you
conference.
believe any of that?
No.
I mean, listen, I believe 100% LeBron punched something.
Yeah. I'm sure. He probably punched JR right in the face.
Exactly. I'm still convinced it was JR straight in the chest. But,
But then after the game, first of all, he walks right off the court. Now, he did, congratulate the guys when he was subbed out. I still found that a little childish. But anyway.
Especially since it was in Cleveland.
Yeah,
you don't want to see on the road. I can see that.
Yeah. He's high-fiving his kids and handshakes and all this, but his hands, I mean, stop it.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But anyway.
I get his shooting struggled, but that to me was the worst part. Like, I don't care. Like, listen, if you broke your hand or partially broke your hand, and I understand. He really did struggle from shooting after a tremendous Game 1. He had 51 points in Game 1, and then I don't think broke 30 the rest of the way. But to leave the court like that, especially on your home floor, I get it on the road, but oh man, that just it is a bad look for LeBron, especially considering how much he's going to be talked about over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and then also real quick, Steve Kerr, several other players saying that this was their hardest title yet. Bill Simmons, if you've ever read any of his basketball books or articles, he talks about the disease of more. It's hard to stay motivated. It's hard for players to keep in that team concept as you win rings and become more famous, and players want, more of their own individual stuff. The Warriors, though, were able to stay motivated. But look, they nearly lost to Houston. If Chris Paul's healthy in Game 7, this might be totally different. But look, where do we go from here now? Where does LeBron go? Does Durant definitely resign? He says he is, but until he puts pen to paper, I don't buy it yet. Could Durant and LeBron go somewhere? I mean, there's so many different things that could happen. And that's why I'm glad we got Brandon on, because he can tell us, how wrong we are.
Well, I mean, I want to, before we touch on that, because I do have an idea of where I think he's going to go. But I want to touch on what you brought up earlier. It's insane to think that this was the first time an NBA Finals ended in a sweep since LeBron's first Finals in 2007, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Against the Spurs. He's been swept twice now in the Finals. That to me is more damaging to his legacy than losing 6 times.
Yeah, I agree.
That's insane. Like, look, he made it 9 times to the finals. Jerry West, by the way, lost 8 straight finals before winning his first. So stop right there with the he's never better than Jordan crap. And he can't be one of the greatest of all time crap because he made it to 9 straight finals. I get Jordan probably would have gone to 8 straight if he hadn't gone and played baseball, but he didn't. So anyway, but getting swept 2 times in your that's bad. That just has a worse negative connotation in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. So where does he go, Christian? Where does LeBron go?
Listen, it's very rare that I listen to anything Brian Windhorst says because I hate saying this about people in the media. There's nobody who's ridden coattails to fame more than Brian Windhorst. He's very talented. He's very good. But he made his career. He made his career of covering LeBron James in high school and only covering LeBron James. And then
so have a lot of players and coaches. There's nothing wrong with that.
I understand that. But he made some really interesting points, and I agree with this in a sense. I think LeBron goes nowhere. I think he stays in Cleveland because his kids are about to become in high school. He's got all that foundation at home. He's he wants to end his career in Cleveland, and he knows he can't play for another 5 years. Do I think it's not going to be with this roster? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean,
there's nothing they can do.
You can trade. I would not be surprised at all if they start trading guys. Trade Kevin Love.
All these players are garbage, Christian. Who do you trade?
You only have one guy to trade, Kevin Love. You get rid of him.
But nobody was even really going to.
And then here's the thing:
you're not going to get near. You're going to get pennies on the dollar for Kevin Love.
If you package somebody with that 8th pick overall,
I don't know.
I just
they have
think
no cap space. There's nothing there.
I understand.
If he stays, he'll never win another title. I'm telling you right now, he'll never win another title.
There's something
Boom,
about
hot take.
Okay, that's fine. And listen, I just don't think where he doesn't have that ego of he wants to be better than Jordan. At least like publicly, he doesn't have that. I think a little bit he's conflicted inside and wants to, but I also think he believes that if he leaves again, the way he's going to be talked about, and if he leaves again, he's not going to be able to be there for his kids and all that stuff. He's an incredible human being, and I don't think he wants to leave Cleveland and deal with that stuff, like being there for his kids' basketball games who are about to be in high school, being there for his foundation. I don't think he wants to do that, which is one of the reasons I think he stays in Cleveland. It's not going to be with this team, though. It may not even be with that head coach. So I know Tyronn Lue says he thinks he's coming back, but no shot.
I really think there's a chance he could go to Boston.
Please no. Please no. No. No.
I think they're going to do some sort of weird 3-team trade. Kyrie's going to end up in New York, and LeBron's going to end up in Boston.
Oh, God, no. Please no.
And the Cavs are going to end up with like 100 first-round picks. That's what I think.
Just no. No. Because I want this next Celtics title to be like, I don't want to say pure because they got Kyrie Irving in a trade. They got Gordon Hayward in free agency. I don't want it to be I just want it to be what it is. I just want it to be perfect. Like,
but Danny Ainge is salivating at the thought of having LeBron James. He is.
I want next year's championship to be perfect, and I don't want LeBron James part of it.
And I love how you just assume they're going to win next year. Stop it.
All
right.
I'm going to Vegas tomorrow and putting money down. I don't even care.
All right, that's fine. Good luck covering Durant. Anyway, so let's take a break here. When we come back, we're going to talk with Brandon Robinson. He can tell us how wrong we are. We'll chat with Scoopy Radio coming up here inside the Cheap Seats on the Public House Media Network.
This is Daniel Poppy, host of How to Write Good here on Public House Media. I just want to thank you for listening to the following broadcast brought to you by Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope that you'll come check out my show, How to Write Good, the writing show that is not about writing. A new show of How to Write Good comes out every Wednesday, so don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of How to Write Good. Again, thanks for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Nicole Kelly, host of Loud and Proud here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Loud and Proud, where we talk about issues facing the disability community. A new show comes out weekly. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Loud and Proud. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome back in the Cheap Seats here on Public House Media this Monday, June 11th. Little Billy Joel moving out here on this Monday morning as a couple free agents might be moving out in this summer in the NBA. We'll touch on that in just a little bit with Brandon Robinson, Scoop B Radio. Christian Heimall, John Lauder here with you. And once again, we welcome Brandon back onto the show. Always appreciate the time here, Brandon. Real quick, let's get to it. John and I discussed this in the last segment. More damaging to LeBron's legacy here, 3-6 in the finals, or the fact that he has now been swept twice in the finals?
Kind of 50-50 if you ask me. I think the 3-6 in the finals, I wish I could give just the Spurs the go-ahead with that one, and you erase that back in 2007 because the Cavs then weren't going to beat the San Antonio Spurs, but I think you're watching a Warriors team I'm not quite calling them a dynasty yet, but I'll say that they are on the precipice of doing something great because they've got 4 young guys that are effective in their own way and have done just amazing work. You got to take your hat off to the Golden State Warriors, this year's NBA Finals champ. And what I think is interesting about that team in particular is the way that they've done it, particularly in Game 3, where their big 4 were very dominated by Kevin Durant, who scored 43 points, and the rest of that big 4 was about 11 for 34 from the field, which is about, or 11 for 35 from the field, which is about 31.4%. And they still won by 8 points. That's simply remarkable, great basketball. And LeBron James can't do it by himself. And so you begin to wonder, does he have to team with other guys to be successful? So I think that 3-6 is definitely a bad record. But I think that in 2015, 2017, and in 2018, LeBron James has done it by himself, and he's going to have to find greener pastures. And I think that 3-6 is bad. I think the Warriors and that situation being swept is definitely bad. It's just all the way bad, as I said before. I believe it's just 50-50.
It's amazing to see how many people are upset about the Warriors winning a 3rd title in 4 years, saying there's no competitive balance in the NBA. But if you look at the last 60 years, there hasn't been a true history of competitive balance. You've had decades where one team won 9 titles, 2 teams winning 7 titles in the last decade. In the 90s, you had 2 teams win 8 titles. What do you make of the backlash of this Warriors, as you have yet to call them a dynasty?
I think that the people who say that just pay attention to headlines and storylines. When you talk about in basketball the last 20 years, it's been dominated by Kobe, Michael Jordan, Shaq, LeBron, with a sprinkle of Chauncey Billups and Hakeem Olajuwon and Kenny the Smith, and their basketball minds. And they've prepared, and we can't leave out Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. Their basketball minds, they're talented, they know the game, and knows what it takes to win. I often, we started the conversation talking about dynasties and or LeBron James's legacy, and I get a bit hesitant because I just think that people are often comparing the Warriors and LeBron, whatever team LeBron is on, to the perfection that was Michael Jordan, where he won 6 championships. And those 6 championships, he took 2 years off in between from the finals because he went to go play baseball, and he couldn't contain Nick Anderson and the Orlando Magic in '95. And he didn't go to the finals. But that being said, I think oftentimes we don't often just take in or appreciate the stars when we have them. And I think that a gut check or that reality was so much so that people faked their appreciation for Kobe Bryant during his retirement tour in 2016. Like, Kobe was a great basketball player, and minus the losing a couple of times in the NBA Finals to the Pistons, I believe in 2004, and the Boston Celtics in 2008. Kobe had a phenomenal career, and I think that oftentimes we don't appreciate athletes, particularly impactful athletes, until they're getting ready to leave. And I think if we're not careful, we will do the same thing with LeBron James. I don't think people realize how great of a basketball player he is. And the same could be said about Steph Curry and the Warriors. I think sometimes people are so busy hating their greatness. Sometimes people are just good. I think the Warriors are just that good. I think LeBron's just good. I find myself sometimes, if I'm at a game and I'm covering any of those guys, whether it be a regular season game, an all-star game, sometimes just taking a step back and enjoying it, because that blink can be gone. And then you're on to the next thing. And I think that a lot of it has to do with social media. A lot of it has to do with, we just have so much content that's out, whether it's online or whether it's on TV. I don't think people appreciate the stars that they have. And I also think they compare them to Michael. And Michael, I think if we compare them to Michael, we need to compare Michael to Bill Russell.
Speaking with Brandon Robinson of Scoop B Radio here inside the cheap seats, John Lauder and Christian Heimall. Brandon, Steve Kerr said after the title that this was the toughest one to get, referencing the disease of more. Bill Simmons has talked about that a lot in all of his different basketball books and articles. Basically, the disease of more being, players after they've won a couple of titles just, not having that same hunger and that same drive. How do the Warriors continue to avoid that and eventually become a true dynasty in your eyes?
Continue to be how they are. I think you look at their Western Conference, you see it's almost like the movie, the Wakanda Forever movie, Black Panther. And, they played the Houston Rockets. That was supposed to be the team that was supposed to beat them. And, if I was the Warriors in the conference finals after we beat the Rockets, I would look at James Harden and Chris Paul and say, "This is your king. This is your king." I think for the Western Conference, they're going to try to find ways to try to match the Warriors. But the Warriors, they're a special team. I'm sure that in free agency, the Dallas Mavericks are going to try to find a way to rebuild and add newer pieces. I'm sure Houston is going to try to recruit LeBron James. I'm sure the Spurs will, and Greg Popovich will try to do the same thing. But all that being said, I think that the Warriors. I say this all the time. My baby sister's 21 years old, and the Warriors are her generation's version, or are slowly or rapidly, whatever word you want to use, becoming this generation's dynasty team. The Spurs have handed the mantle over, and now it's the Warriors' turn, and I really do believe that when Michael Jordan retired for good, and we're not even counting the Wizards when he was on that team, but when he left the Bulls in '98, Michael handed that baton over, half the baton over to Shaq and Kobe and the Lakers, and the other half to Tim Duncan and the Spurs. Because I think that the Spurs quietly built a dynasty, and I think that the Warriors are doing the same thing. And, Steve Kerr is a disciple and a hybrid of both Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich. And it's interesting to watch. You love to hate them, but, they figured out the formula. They figured out the cheat code. And, also the Warriors kind of found the cheat code that LeBron James and Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade created, taking less money to go elsewhere. They did that in finding Kevin Durant, taking less money. And, he gets more advertisement on the back end by, being in Northern California and, messing with the Napa Valley. So, it's interesting to watch, and I don't want to ramble, but I'll just say it's interesting to watch.
So now that the finals are over, we can get to the real crux of the NBA, and that is the offseason and free agency, especially this year now with LeBron James having an option. Do you feel that LeBron takes that option? Is there any chance that he takes that option, plays for Cleveland for one more year, and we have the same conversation next year, or is he out and gone from Cleveland this summer?
I don't think I'm going to take the line that some of my other media cohorts say. I don't think LeBron knows what LeBron wants to do yet, and I think that it seems very. It reminds me similarly to LeBron walking out the Boston Celtics tunnel in 2010, and in the conference finals, throwing his jersey in the laundry bin, and going about his business. He's getting older, and he's playing for championships at this point. I think LeBron staying would require too much recruiting on his end, and I don't think he has the relationship with current Cavs GM Kobe Altman that he may have with other GMs. And I think that I just don't. Nobody really wants to play for Cleveland like that. I think Kyle Korver coming looked good on paper. The trade that they got for the other pieces, whether it's Larry Nance Jr., whether it's Rodney Hood, who played well in Game 3, by the way. But I think that team is decaying and getting older. I think a LeBron James-led team, it lasts you it's a 2 to 3 year window, and then he has to find new blood. He did that in 2014 when he came back to Cleveland. And, he had a younger Tristan Thompson, a Kyrie Irving, and other pieces involved. And, I think he got Ty Lue a very coveted coaching job after paying his dues under Doc Rivers in Boston and with the LA Clippers. And, it's to answer your question, it may be time to move on. And there are other teams that, could use him right away.
We're here inside the cheap seats on the Public House Media Network. John Lauder and Christian Heimall speaking with Brandon Robinson, ScoopBRadio.com, a fellow Hofstra graduate. Brandon, we had you on a couple weeks ago, and you said that Miami is still a possibility for LeBron James to return to. Now, Christian somehow thinks that he stays in Cleveland because of his personal life. I mentioned in the last segment that I think he could go to Boston. I do think that's possible. Obviously, they'd have to get rid of Kyrie because I don't think those two would play together again at this point. But what are the most likely scenarios for LeBron to head to this summer, since it sounds like you think he's moving on again?
Well, it's funny John mentions the credit to him, the Boston Celtics, because Stephen A. Smith actually said he gave a list of teams that could go, that he could potentially have a cup of coffee with and have conversation with. And, it does make sense to, with Kyrie Irving, his former teammate in Cleveland, having a year left on his contract. And there's talk that he wants to leave. And by the way, I can tell you firsthand from my sources that Kyrie Irving has always wanted to play for the New York Knicks. Growing up in West Orange, New Jersey, his father being from the South Bronx, and just knowing that, and his godfather being Rod Strickland, a New York legend, that desire to play for the Knicks is a realistic option. That's just something being tossed into the wind. But directly to your question about LeBron James, going to Boston and basically shipping Kyrie for LeBron, but also sending Gordon Hayward to the Boston Celtics with Kyrie would help the Cavaliers rebuild right away if LeBron is interested. They also have the 8th pick in the 2018 NBA draft. They could rebuild fast and in a hurry. It seems that whenever LeBron leaves, he always he gives them a stimulus package, if you will, in rebuilding their team. Shout out to Obama for knowing that reference. But I think that another option for LeBron James, people have talked about the OKC Thunder. He's always talked about wanting to team up with Carmelo Anthony. Will he resign? That's a question that needs to be answered, because I can see Carmelo finally going to Houston and giving, his Jordan brand teammate, Chris Paul, some help. But then, Paul George and LeBron have been linked together. Will they go to the Lakers together? Will they go to the Rockets together? But then Philadelphia is a popular option. And, last week, former Cavs GM, David Griffin appeared on my buddy Zach Gelb show over at CBS and said that, Philadelphia would be a viable option. And then you look at what's happening in Philadelphia right now with Jerry Colangelo being gone from his post over there. Could the Philadelphia 76ers then hire David Griffin and who has a direct line to LeBron in his camp and get him to come? But LeBron being a ball dominant guy, will he coexist with Ben Simmons? Will he make will he turn Joel Embiid into the modern day Kevin Love and Chris Bosh and making him a jump shooter and falling in love with that jumper? Quite frankly, I hate it. And I think that when Joel Embiid plays in the post, he is the postman. But, there's a lot of options. But I think as his kids are getting older, I know that he wants to be directly involved with him as his oldest son is preparing for high school. I know for a fact that when LeBron was in Miami, his wife hated it. He was away from his family for that first year. It was almost like the kid who never left home that finally got out and was able to go to Miami. He's been in Northeast Ohio all his life. It was a little more difficult at 33, trying to win championships elsewhere. You want to go somewhere more settled. San Antonio was a settled option. And I can also tell you that Kyrie Irving has often, side note, marveled at the playing in San Antonio. San Antonio was on his list. So it's interesting to see LeBron and Kyrie's name kind of in headlines again. But LeBron has a lot of options to consider. I don't think he totally knows what he wants to do yet. But my top picks are staying with Cleveland, potentially going to Philadelphia, which is not that far from Ohio, and Also, I still put Miami Heat towards the bottom, but an option that he will consider.
More likely to happen, and then we'll let you go after this. I shouldn't say more likely, but what's going to be the more surprising move? LeBron James, Paul George, or Kawhi Leonard? Because there's been talk, obviously, all season that there's a lot of tension between Kawhi and San Antonio.
So your question is, what would be more surprising?
Yeah, what would be the more surprising of the three? At least where they go. Where not saying if they leave, but where they end up going. What could be the most surprising situation?
I guess Kawhi Leonard and LeBron James, because that relationship, from folks I speak with that are familiar with that situation directly, Kawhi wants out, and it would be surprising if LeBron goes to San Antonio with Kawhi Leonard there. But I think it's just interesting to me seeing LeBron go to Boston after all those years. But anything is possible in the NBA. They used to say anything. You never know what to expect in the WWE. The NBA is now the WWE. So anything could happen. And LeBron James could turn heel at any time. And, at this point, he's chasing championships. Boston's pretty daggone close. Partnering LeBron with Jason Tatum and Terry Rozier and Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens could be the modern day Eric Spoelstra, if you will. And it'll be interesting to see what happens.
It would be very interesting to see, and now that the summer is officially here for the NBA, this is where it really gets, I guess, kind of interesting, is where all these guys go. Brandon Robinson, Scoop B Radio. As always, buddy, we appreciate the time and the insight here today.
Buddy, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Brandon Robinson, Scoop B Radio, joining us here. A lot of stuff there. Always fun to talk with him. When we get back, we'll wrap things up with this show. Got some NFL news and notes about John's going to get really, really angry about Calvin Johnson. And we, of course, our Mojo Monday. It's all coming up here in the Cheap Seats on the Public House Media Network.
This is Ryan Pierce, host of Completely Serious here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Completely Serious, where we talk about sports and have fun with great guests. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Completely Serious. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
I'm the Greg.
And I am Dave Show.
We host the Greg and Dave Show on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out our show, The Greg and Dave Show, where we talk about strange, bizarre, and sometimes just downright quirky news stories that you may not have heard about.
A new show comes out every Wednesday. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes. And hey, thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
And we are back here inside the Cheap Seats on the Public House Media Network. John Lauder and Christian Heimall with you on June 11th, 2018. Nice conversation we just had there with Brandon Robinson, Scoop B Radio, talking to us about where LeBron could go, the finals, etc. But let's get into some NFL here in our Mojo Monday to finish things up on this episode. Some NFL headlines. More drama with the Patriots, Christian. They just can't seem to get out of their own way. Julian Edelman facing a 4-game suspension for PED use. Didn't know that was part of the TB12 method. And then a rumored Gronk trade as well. Basically, for New England, the offseason's a waste of time. Just need to get to the regular season, go 12-4, and then get back to the Super Bowl.
Yep, there are two seasons in the NFL, I feel like. There's the regular season, and then there's try to stop the Patriots, which, because you can't do it in the regular season, they're going to make the Super Bowl. So do everything you can in the offseason to, make sure the Patriots aren't good in the regular season. But this Edelman thing, I'm sorry, I can't believe a single athlete who says, I don't know what happened. I don't know how this happened with a PED use or a drug use of any kind.
Me neither. It's ridiculous.
Similar to like Robinson Cano, who, he took a masking agent, supposedly. And that's what he got suspended for, 80 games in Major League Baseball. And he says, I don't know how this happened. I've been a clean. I'm sorry, but in this day and age, how do you not know what you're putting into your body? How are you? Because everybody is trying to get you. When you're in the professional eye, in the public eye, everybody's trying to bring you down. How are you not that careful with everything? And the Alex Guerrero stuff makes it so much worse. Brady's trainer and the whole TB12 thing. I'm actually surprised there hasn't been someone in like Philadelphia or a Jets fan who has said, the drug kingpin of New England is Tom Brady. I'm really surprised at that right now.
And then the whole Gronk thing too is just ridiculous. I mean, he's the best tight end in the league. Why would they trade him? It makes no sense. I know there were some rumors about retirement and him not being happy. Bottom line is this: he's already one of the best tight ends in the history of the NFL, and he's not going anywhere. It just makes no sense. Why would they trade him? That's completely illogical.
Yeah, and now if you're Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick, you are so happy that Gronk did decide to come back this year after contemplating retirement at the end of the Super Bowl, because look at your wide receiving core. Kenny Britt, who had one good year in Tennessee, like a decade ago. Jordan Matthews, who, no disrespect, he hasn't been a top receiver before. Cordarrelle Patterson, I haven't heard his name since the draft, honestly. And Chris Hogan. Chris Hogan, who's probably the most experienced guy on that receiving corps. So it's insane to think that this is going to happen again, especially after Amendola left for Miami, Brandon Cooks is gone. They've lost so much from their score, but it's the Patriots. It's a plug and play system for Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. I will say this though, I'm not saying that I forged the testing and I messed with it for Edelman, but this kind of really strengthens my Des Bryant to New England argument that I've been making for a month and a half.
It does. He's got to find a home. Speaking of former...
I'm not saying I did it, but,
Yeah, you clearly did. Speaking of former Cowboys wide receivers, Terrell Owens has finally been inducted into the Hall of Fame. Took long enough.
Yep.
And has declined his invite to the induction, the first player ever. People are freaking out. Gary Myers tweeted that he wouldn't have voted for him if he knew he wouldn't come to the induction ceremony. Then he was on the Michael Kay show, and they blasted him for 10 minutes. Look, bottom line is this. I'm tired of Hall of Fames. They're really starting to piss me off. I don't care if he goes or not. All these Hall of Fames act all holier than thou.
Yep.
They're the beacon of all that's good and amazing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Look, T.O. should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. They intentionally kept him out, which was garbage. He has a right to be salty about it. And if he doesn't want to go, don't go. Who cares? I don't care. Okay, people are saying that it's ruining it for everyone else this year. Stop it. They're still getting to wear their gold jackets. They're still getting to go talk about how great they are. Stop it. I don't care if Owens doesn't go. What difference does it make? The whole thing is starting to annoy me. These Hall of Fames are really starting to bother me. We should just get rid of all of them. No Hall of Fames. If you're good, you're good. If you're not, you're not, and that's it. I'm tired of it.
It doesn't really bother me that much. I mean, look, I get it. You don't want to induct somebody who doesn't want to be there. It's because the ceremony it's as much about the fans as it is the players, if not more so. It's about the fans getting a chance to actually see one of their heroes or whatever. And for some who make those trips to those Hall of Fame induction ceremonies to actually see it, some people plan their trips to these Hall of Fames to see their hero get inducted and then go actually tour it. The first time that I went to the Baseball Hall of Fame was I didn't go for the induction ceremony, but I really wanted to go to Pedro Martinez's induction ceremony.
Right.
That was the whole thing. NFL-wise, I mean, T.O., he didn't play in one spot for his entire career, obviously, but he's got a bevy of fans, especially in San Francisco. So you'd have to assume that, there are Niners fans who maybe have never been to the Hall of Fame that were looking to go for the induction ceremony. Now they don't get a chance to. I understand that's not T.O.'s problem. He shouldn't care. What I'm more annoyed about is what you said. Who was it that said he wouldn't have voted if he knew T.O. was going to do that?
Gary Myers.
That's petty. CBS, right?
Of course,
that's petty. Because here's the thing. These writers, this is my problem. The Hall of Fame should be voted on? People who are in the Hall of Fame. That's who it should be voted on. Who do you want as one of your peers? Not these writers who are going to find ways to drag down everybody else. Not these current players who are going to, hate on guys that they didn't like playing against or playing with. The guys who are already in should be the ones who vote their counterparts in. Because you know what? I'm sorry, and I know I always bring it back to baseball. The Hall of Famers in baseball, Pete Rose and Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, they'd be in right now. Because those guys played against them. They watch them grow. They don't care because they know talent when they see talent. And I'm sorry, but these writers, you want to talk about, the Hall of Fame isn't holier than thou. It's the writers who vote on it that are holier than thou. So that bothers me tremendously that someone would say something like that.
I agree. Last thing here before we get to our Mojo Monday, Calvin Johnson apparently, speaking of being salty, wants his touchdown versus the Packers overturned, if you all remember that whole catch wasn't a catch situation, and then put into his stats. All I wrote in my notes that I do every week for the show, Christian. It's just seriously in capital letters with a bunch of question marks like 8 times. Okay? Don't even waste my time with this garbage. You intentionally put this in here to make me mad, didn't you?
I did. 100%. 100% put that in there.
It worked because I'm furious.
It was either that or talk about Johnny Manziel in the CFL, and nobody cares about that.
Nobody cares about that. And I don't care about this. It's garbage. Stop it. You're a baby. You're out of the NFL now. Go away.
This is one of those things that I just love because, like, all those stadiums, and again, I'm bringing it back to baseball as always, but all those ballparks that, like, move their fences in, how many guys would want those fly balls at the wall turned into home runs to inflate their numbers? Like, dude, Calvin, we get it. This was your chance to take a pot shot at the NFL. Whoop-de-freaking-do. Do us a favor. Come back and play and be the Hall of Famer again. Like, do us a favor.
That'd be nice.
Like, seriously, come on. Don't be salty from wherever you are. Just, come back and play. Dominate again. Go play for the Patriots. Oh, my God. Do it.
That would be something. All right, so let's get to Mojo Monday here on this June 11th. I will cede the floor to you and let you start.
Okay, because I'm angry about something, and it really, really bothered me and actually insulted me as a fan. I know you know this, John. It's been since college where I kind of really got into MMA and the UFC and all that stuff. I was insulted as a fan on Saturday night. UFC 225 was in Chicago. I went out because I usually do to watch these big fights. I was really excited to see Robert Whittaker and Yoel Romero. Even after Romero failed to make weight and the title fight meant nothing, Colby Covington was sick. He was tremendously talented. Both co-main events were really good fights. Holly Holm was a tremendous fight. The last 3 fights were great. My problem was the first fight of the main card bored me, turned me off, and got me really pissed off. CM Punk, who, by the way, real name Phil Brooks. Don't come into the UFC and try to go by your WWE name. You look like a tool. Secondly, you actually look like a tool. Third, you got embarrassed. Completely and blatantly embarrassed in your second UFC fight, your first one in almost 2 years. Mike Jackson, he looked bored fighting CM Punk. And at one point, they got stood up and they went to go fight again, and you could see CM Punk mention this. He literally said, "What are we doing?" Like, he had no idea what he was doing. It was embarrassing. I actually tweeted during the fight, I don't know who should be more embarrassed. Punk for his quote-unquote effort, Mike Jackson for not finishing this fight like he should, the referee for not stopping this embarrassment of a fight, or Dana White for allowing this cluster to actually happen. It was an embarrassment to the UFC. It was an insult to its fans, especially in his hometown, CM Punk's hometown of Chicago. It was an absolute embarrassment, and I'm sorry. But, dude, if he sets foot into an octagon again for the UFC, I may never watch. It was absolutely embarrassing.
All right, I like it. I also have a bad mojo this week, and I'm just going to keep it short and simple. My bad mojo is the Mets, Christian. It's the Mets.
You want to just cut this and we just play it on loop every week?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand how a New York franchise in the biggest market in the country could be so decrepitly terrible, so poorly run, so much of a disaster as the New York Mets.
Yeah, no, they're bad.
I don't understand it. Injuries galore, a manager that has no idea what he's doing, an offense that scored like 1 run in their last 38 games. They've got one of the top 5 pitchers in the league, and they give him no run support ever. Yeah, they're an abject disaster, and I have nothing else to say. I'm sorry to Mets fans.
There was somebody, I think it was Joel Sherman might have tweeted it during Saturday's game. The biggest discrepancy in talent between the Mets and the Yankees might be in the GM's office. And I don't think he's wrong there. I don't think he's wrong.
No.
So
I don't either.
But that's going to do it for us here on the show. Big thanks to Brandon Robinson, Scoopy Radio, for joining us on the show. Big thanks to you guys for being a part of the show. As always, don't forget to head to our Facebook page, Cheap Seats by Public House Media. Vote on the poll question, is the Triple Crown an athletic achievement? Download, subscribe, rate, review, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, TuneIn Radio, of course, thephmedia.com. And until next time, for John Lauder, I'm Christian Heimall. We'll see you in the Cheap Seats.